Hello everyone. Tonight I'm actually going to be showing you another restoration project I've had going on here. This is an ARP Odyssey model 2810, and basically this one's actually going to be for sale. It belongs to one of my good friends by the name of Andy Baker, and he's just kind of decided to sell it after we restored it. And so anyways, I'm just going to give you a kind of walkthrough of what you've got here. Basically, when I restored it, there was not one thing I did not touch. Because I went through this whole thing, rebuilt the keyboard assembly, all new key bushings, fixed Oscillator 2. It had an issue, which was a 4011 quad input, or quad 2 input NAND gate is what it was, which is a little IC that typically goes bad in Moogs and ARPs and other synthesizers. But anyways, what we have here is actually 2810 with 2802 boards, which is basically almost like the 2800 boards. It's actually got the same kind of layout with some exceptions on the actual keyboard circuit board. But the oscillator board is very, very similar, and even the filter board, you could probably actually put a 4035 filter in this one if you wanted to. However, it does have the 4075 filter in it, but I did actually calibrate it a little different, so you actually get some really nice self-oscillations out of this filter. And for anybody that don't know what I'm talking about with 4075 and 4035 filters, basically the 4035 was when ARP actually ripped off Moog. And what happened is ARP built this filter that was almost identical to Moog's, and Moog actually sued them. And then ARP had to change their design, obviously, because they were breaking copyrights. So they had to modify their filter a little different, and they lost the self-oscillation, and it just didn't sound as good. But in this case, I've actually redone it, and I've got it sounding really good. But anyways, guys, I'll just kind of give you an overlook here of what it looks like, because it will be on eBay. Andy Baker's going to post it on eBay, and it'll probably be shipped from here. But anyways, guys, you know, it's really clean, and of course with every restoration there's some things you just can't fix. And in this case, somebody had modified this one back in the 80s with a very early MIDI kit, and when I got it, it just did not work right at all, and it was really just a piece of crap. The MIDI kit was very unpredictable. You couldn't get it to work correctly, and it just wasn't really, at that time they installed it, it just wasn't a good, modification. And plus, since you can get, like the Kenton Pro Solo MIDI to CV converter, that's the way to go if you really want true MIDI on equipment like this. And plus, this one also has the CV inputs and outputs, so you can actually hook it up to a Kenton controller. But with that said, it being modified, there was a few things that did happen from one of the owners, where it looks like they tried to actually punch holes, but there actually is no holes here. They just actually dented the metal. It looks like they was going to, instead of drilling holes like a normal person, it looks like they're actually going to tap holes in with a hammer, and they just dented the chassis. And then they scratched the paint, so they covered it up with permanent marker, it looks like. But I did clean it up really well. I cleaned the interface up real good. But that was just one of those things that you just really can't fix. It's damaged, and that's that. But as far as the circuit boards go, they're great. I actually removed all the modifications and set it up back to actual factory spec. And there is one little scratch here, which you can kind of see on camera. It's not real bad. It looks worse on camera because of the light angle. But you can see it. It's got a nice little scratch there, and no real big deal. And then the other thing is too, is that it actually still has the MIDI jack, which is not connected to anything. And then there's one little hole where a toggle switch was, where you could actually select between the keyboard or the MIDI kit. So it was a weird design, something I've never seen before in some of the stuff. But anyways, guys, what I'm going to do right quick is actually just give you a good demo, and kind of show you how everything's working, and just kind of give you an overview. But I didn't cut any corners. I will tell you that much. Everything in this thing is very, very good. I looked over everything, calibrated everything, and so what you get is a very nice working ARP Odyssey. So anyways, let me set my camera back up here, and I'm going to sit on my tripod here. It might take me a minute to get it in here. This is actually a new tripod. I'm learning how to use it. There we go. Okay, so anyways, let me just kind of adjust that just a hair. There we go. So yeah, anyways guys, I actually have plenty of pictures on this thing too that I took while I was restoring it. So if anybody's interested in pictures, you know, let me know and I can send them to you. So anyways, let's get started here. I'm going to start with Oscillator 1. We're actually in the square wave output, which is basically pulse width. And you can control the pulse width by a slider and even make it modulate. So anyways, here we go. So here's just a quick look. Octave, 2 octaves down. As you can hear, it sounds really good. Up 2 octaves. And then you got glide. You got pitch bend. Like that. And then you can also change the pulse width. As you'll notice, the slider is very clean and accurate. You can make that modulate. Like so. So anyways, that's Oscillator 1. Also, you do have frequency modulation, which I'll show you. You got a sorry, not a sawtooth. You got a square wave, and then you got a sine wave. Sorry, I'll get things right here in a minute. I'm a little tired, so I'm losing my train of thought. But what I like to do is actually with ARP, since both oscillators have independent control and mix over each one, you can do some really cool things. But first of all, also with that said, you have ADSR control on your oscillator, which actually will control pitch. It actually looks at your envelope generator. But you can actually get some drum effects. And then you can add noise to that. Like that. And get some really crazy combinations. Anyways, you can hear how clean that is. Then you got sample and hold. Like so. But that's basically Oscillator 1. And then Oscillator 2. Also, something else I should mention right quick before I move from Oscillator 1 is you can actually turn this into an LFO source as well by hitting the switch. And you'll hear it's just a pulse. Which actually can be used in your mix section. If we do this right here, Oscillator 2. And then actually, let me turn on Oscillator. Before we do that, let me show you Oscillator 2's working correctly. Here we go. So now this is Oscillator 2 you're hearing. Same kind of control. Sample and hold, and then you got your LFO as well. Now is when I actually talk about using this switch that turns your Oscillator 1 into LFO. If I go here and select mixer, and actually make sure this slider is all the way up in the sample and hold mixer section, I can use Oscillator 1 as a LFO source for Oscillator 2. there we go, little slider. As you can hear. That's actually a really cool thing, because now what I've actually done is using the ADSR to control the pitch of oscillator 1 to drive oscillator 2 as use this as an LFO for oscillator 2. Now if I do this, whoops. Actually, I take that back. You got to have oscillator 1 to make the ring modulator work right, because it uses oscillator 1 as a carrier. So anyways, with that said, we'll go back here, set it back up normal. So now here's oscillator 1 and 2 together. Because you can see just how accurate I've got the calibration. It actually has 0 beat. Very little. And actually what you're hearing there is the euphonic mode. So anyways, you know, pretty cool stuff. We can also make these modulate. Change the pulse width just a bit. Let's set up a slow attack with a slow release time. Now you get things like this. Now here's where you actually get to play the filter as well. As you can hear, I got that filter where it'll self-oscillate. And actually what you're hearing too is I've actually got the attack and release envelope generator working for the filter. So it's actually independent from the ADSR envelope generator. So as you can hear, I can actually make the filter have a different response than the actual amplifier. You hear the filter will build up where the attack is all the way low on the amplifier. You can also make it have a short release time. Stuff like that. So it's really cool and really flexible. Of course, the ARP, don't take it wrong, this thing can get really alien-like. It's in my opinion, this is why they used it on Close Encounters, or ARP synthesizers in general. They actually use a 2500 on Close Encounters. But this thing holds some characteristics as far as what ARP was going for, and this is where they kind of outshine Moog in some ways. Because I mean, I'm a huge Moog fan, but I'm also, you know, I like ARPs and I like other synthesizers too, as I mentioned in a lot of my videos. So I'm not really, you know, biased toward one or the other. I actually like all synthesizers, and all of them are a little different. And the ARP, you can just do some really crazy things, which I'll show you here. So actually, we'll turn on oscillators here, and actually, let's go to ring modulator now since I've got it set up. So now actually what you're going to hear is you're going to hear the ring modulator. You know, kind of bland, but what you can actually do is actually combine oscillators with that. And you can kind of get this distorted kind of sound, which is really cool. Stuff like that, which is really cool. And Moog doesn't really do that too well. You have to have a lot of external gear to make it do stuff like that. With that said, also something I should go back and show you is actually the sawtooth waveforms work for oscillators as well. Oscillator 1. Same thing with oscillator 2. As the two together. So that's all working. Something else too, let me actually just demo the filter real well for you. Because you can actually make it have CV control as well. If you turn down this slider, that actually bypasses, that's actually your slider that controls the amount of envelope generators. And of course you have ADSR or attack release envelope generator right here. This is your ADSR. And the only thing I don't like about the ARP design is they put the volume slider right here. And so sometimes I tend to go over here and adjust attack or adjust volume instead of attack. So it's kind of strange. But anyways, what we'll actually do is let me set the filter at where it'll resonate, as you can hear. And now let's actually put some CV control to that. Filter is really good now. It's actually got a nice resonance. For a 4075 filter, that's not bad. Also, you can actually make the filter modulate. And using the same slider as the CV gate, you can actually add FM to that filter. There we go. That's your attack, and that's your decay time you're hearing there, and I can set the sustain. Anyways, this is kind of wild, but what gets really wild is when you do stuff like this, where you actually combine, make it self-trigger. And then also, something else I should mention too right quick, I actually left this part out. You actually have oscillator sync, which allows the two oscillators to sync up, and it's a hard sync. So what you have is something like this. And also, with that said too, before we get real crazy here, you can actually get some Kraftwerk kind of sounds, because Kraftwerk actually used ARP Odysseys along with mini Moogs. And one song comes to mind is Neon Lights, I believe is the name of it. That you can hear. I can't remember how the song actually goes, but because you're in glide. A very beautiful sound. I actually love the sound of this thing. But with that said, you can also make it make the sample and hold trigger off the key. So every time you hit a key, it has a different sample. So for instance, you'll hear a difference in oscillator. I'll cut oscillator 1 out. Not very impressive until you do something like this. You kind of hear it's very musical, but like I said earlier, you can get really crazy, which is what I'm about to do. So do this. So as you can hear, it can do some really wild things as well, which is very impressive. I mean, to me, that is as simple as the Odyssey is. Some of the complex tones you can get out of this thing is just really cool. And once again, I mean, you can always go back and set it back up to normal. As you can hear, and actually I got the filter modulating with sample and hold. That's what you're hearing there. It's really cool stuff, and I actually own an Odyssey myself, and the Odyssey is a very cool machine, and fits great with a Moog, and fits great with other synthesizers. But yeah, anyways, guys, this one actually is going to be for sale, like I said, and it's fully working. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them, because there's not one thing I did not touch on this harp. I went through and recapped everything like I said earlier. And it actually has, I set this thing back up to factory spec. It has the inputs and outputs for the CV outs and everything, so you can actually use it as a controller or use a controller to control it, which is really nice. But anyways, guys, I appreciate you watching this video. And like I said, if you got any questions, feel free to ask. Talk to y'all later.